Hey, folks, welcome to Phantoms and Monsters Radio. Now, Wisconsin has always carried a strange dual identity. To many, it's farmland, forests, lakeshore, small towns, old mining settlements, and quiet roads cutting through the dark. It is a place of Friday fish fries, county fairs, deer camps, frozen lakes, and deep woods that seem peaceful by daylight. But after dark, Wisconsin becomes something else. The roads grow lonelier, the tree lines seem closer, and the old cemeteries and mining towns hold their silence a little too tightly. Now, the lake marshes, wood trails become thresholds, places where the ordinary world appears to thin and sometime else steps through. In tonight's presentation, we move across the state from Lake Geneva to Mineral Point, from Madison to Sturgeon Bay, from Barron County to La Crosse, from Kettle Moraine to the rural roads near Darien. The cases include a terrifying black humanoid that chased a vehicle at highway speed, a strange legend of the Mineral Point vampire, a winged humanoid seen at the Wisconsin State Fair, a vanishing woman believed to be an angel, a Glimmer Man encounter in northeast Wisconsin, a demon-like animal south of Barron, the infamous Man-Bat of Briggs Road, black-eyed children on Lonely Road, and massive shadowy thing in the Kettle Moraine, and then a flying witch-like being near Turtle Creek. Now, some of these encounters are violent in their emotional impact. Others are bizarre, almost folkloric. One may even be benevolent, but taken together, they suggest something persistent in Wisconsin's landscape. Something that waits near roads, something that watches from the woods, something that appears on the edge of the headlights, streetlights, fairgrounds, bridges, cemeteries, and trails. And once seen, it's not easily forgotten. This is Unexplained Wisconsin. Now, our first report begins in December 2022 near Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Now, this is not an isolated cabin story or an old legend passed through generations. It happened in a neighborhood road setting late at night after a routine trip to a gas station. The witnesses first believed they were seeing a person jogging in the cold, but within seconds, that ordinary assumption collapsed. What they saw was too tall, too fast, too thin, and moved in a way that seemed both twitchy and fluid. Its arms were stretched behind it. Its hands were huge. Its body was black. Its head was shaped like a teardrop. And when it turned, the encounter became a pursuit. The witness states, "I saw something in the road and it changed me. I want to know if anyone else has experienced something similar or knows what I saw." It was December 2022. It was Christmas shopping. I was Christmas shopping with a friend near Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, where I live. The shopping took up most of the day, and we had a lot with us by the time we got home. It was already dark, so we figured we might as well push through and wrap everything. Now, by the time we were finished, it was a little after 1 a.m. We were out of cigarettes, so we left my place and drove to a gas station. Now, I had driven earlier because my friend does not handle heavy traffic well, so she offered to drive this time. I am a bit of a night owl, so late night drives are not unusual for me. Now, the road I live on is long. It's not isolated or rural, but there are wooded areas nearby and the train tracks close to my place. The neighborhood also has apartment buildings and houses. I use this road daily, especially at night. Now, after leaving the gas station, we were approaching an intersection with a stop sign where we needed to turn left to get back into my place. I was on the passenger side playing Pokemon Go with my friend said, "That person must be crazy to be jogging out here." I looked up and saw someone crossing the intersection. Now, at first, it looked like a person jogging. I laughed and agreed with her, but then I noticed how fast and tall he was. I blurted out, "Wow, dude is fast, really tall. Why is he running so weird?" Now, at first, I did not think much about it. But as we got closer, I realized he was running hunched over and leaning forward, and his arms stretched behind him, almost like they run when they do in Naruto. His arms were incredibly long, extending past his knees. His hands were huge with long fingers. He was skinny, and I mean sickly skinny. The closer we got, the more wrong everything looked and felt. His movements were strange, twitchy, but also fluid, especially for the speed at which he was moving. There were streetlights along the intersection in the road, but it seemed unusually dark outside. And as we came to the stop sign under the street lamp, he had just crossed the road. But then he stopped right before the edge where the light reached, maybe 15 yards away. That was when I looked at the dashboard clock and everything hit me at once. It was the middle of winter. It was 1:30 a.m. It was cold as hell. Who would be out jogging like that? But then I realized that this was not a man. This thing stood with its back to us, hunched forward, arms stretched behind it, and its long claw-like hands visible. It was the most intimidating stance I'd ever seen. It was easily over 7 foot tall, completely black, and its head was shaped like a teardrop. We sat at the stop sign staring at it for almost 10 seconds. Then it did the fastest 180 turn I'd ever seen and came straight at us. I had never felt fear like that before. It was not just being scared. An intense panic rushed over me. Pure terror. It felt heavy and my whole body was screaming, "Danger, you're in danger." I yelled, "Go, go, go." The car screeched as we took off, and my phone flew out of my hand. I looked behind us and sank even deeper into terror. This thing was just not keeping up with us. It was gaining on us. I yelled, "Floor it, it's right behind us." At around 60 miles an hour, we finally started to lose it. I scrambled for my phone to call 911. Then the car came to a stop. I immediately turned toward my friend. She was staring straight ahead, wide-eyed. She kept saying, "I need to see it. I need to see it." I was so panicked that I instinctively turned toward me and said, "You're not crazy. I saw it too. You're not crazy. I saw it too. It's real. We need to go before it gets us." She snapped out of it and floored it again. I grabbed my phone, dialed 911, then stopped. It was like I finally got a grip on myself, almost as if the distance between us and that thing had reduced the fear. My friend yelled, "What are you doing? Call the cops." I said, "They'll never believe us." I used to listen to a podcast and remember the host saying that when people see things like this, he sometimes wishes they would turn around to go verify what they saw. So I told her not to pull up to my place because it could still be behind us. I said, floor it to the end of the road. We're switching as fast as we can. I'm going to drive and put my phone against the windshield to record. And you're going to use your phone to record. Then we'll have more proof for the police to back up what just happened. She panicked and kept saying no, but she drove past my place anyway. We got to the end of the road, switched places, and I drove back toward to where we had seen this thing. But there was nothing. All this had happened within minutes. Considering how fast it had been going and how fast we were going, we should have met it again. Now, as we approached the area where we first saw it, I do not know how to explain it, but the same fear came back. I realized that when we lost it, it might have turned around and gone back the other way, further down the road near where we first saw it. Now, the speed limit was 25, and I slowed down to about 15 when that fear started weighing on me again. Then something happened that felt like a movie. A large group of deer ran towards us from the direction where we were headed. They were literally running in the middle of the road alongside the car, bumping into each other. There had to be more than 10 of them, both buck and doe. They were running toward the car as if there was far less danger than whatever was behind them. I had never seen deer run that fast or so tightly together in that number. I had to stop and wait for them to pass before I could continue. My friend said it must be in that direction. Something must be have terrified those deer to run toward us like that. It's got to be that thing we saw. And I was thinking the same thing. And I felt that fear again. Now, I continued down the stretch of road, but we saw nothing. We couldn't find it. Now, I drove until 6 a.m. because I was too scared to go home without proof to give to the police. I convinced myself I would feel safe if I knew the police were driving around my area looking for it. I was afraid it might follow me home if I went back before daylight. Now, since that night, I can be sitting in my living room playing a game and suddenly feel the same primal fear and panic wash over me. It does not happen every day, but at first it happened a couple times a week. It feels like it must be close. And that's why I feel this terror. I have been gaming and laughing with friends, not thinking about it at all, but then boom, the terror crashes into me like the thing is close and watching me. I know I'm not in a constant state of paranoia. That's why the fear feels so different. I can be having a good night and the thing completely out of my mind, and then the fear returns. Now, lately it's become more frequent and more intense. I smoke, so I go out at night. Sometimes everything feels fine and I feel safe. Other times I feel watched and unsafe, like my body is screaming, "You're in danger." The thing I saw on the road that night was black, but the thing I have seen after is white and almost glowing white eyes and sharp exposed teeth. It has the same tall, thin body and teardrop-shaped head. I know this all sounds crazy. What do you think it was? And that Lake Geneva encounter has several elements that appear again and again with modern cryptid and humanoid reports. An unnatural body shape, impossible speed, overwhelming fear in the sense that the witness has crossed into presence of something predatory. But Wisconsin's strangeness is not limited to modern roadside encounters. Now, our next case moves into a much older setting, Mineral Point in Iowa County. Mineral Point is one of those Wisconsin's historic communities tied to the lead mining era Cornish settlement, old stone buildings, and 19th century architecture. It is the kind of place where history is not just remembered, it still seems to linger in the streets. And according to local accounts, something pale, caped, and impossible has appeared there more than once. Now, the quiet community of Mineral Point, located in Iowa County, Wisconsin, has long carried the atmosphere of an old settlement with deep roots. The town history dates back to the lead mining era, when southwestern Wisconsin drew miners and settlers to what became one of the region's important early communities. Now, Mineral Point is also closely associated with Cornish mining heritage. 19th century architecture and a preserved historic district that still gives the town a distinctly old world feel. Now, according to an article written by author Lynn Gibson in 2013, the first widely circulated Mineral Point vampire report began in 1981. Now, at the time, stories circulated that something unusual had taken up residence in Graceland Cemetery. Local police officer John Pepper reportedly went to investigate while on patrol one evening. And as he entered the cemetery and made his rounds, he saw what was described as a tall figure wearing a cape with a pale or white face. The figure appeared startled and fled. Officer Pepper gave chase until the cape figure reached the fence and escaped over it. Now, the next morning, Pepper and other officers reportedly returned to the cemetery to examine the area. Snow was still on the ground, but the oddest detail was that it was what they did not find. There were no tracks on either side of the fence where the figure should have landed and continued running. Now, some later retellings provide slight different details. Another article notes that Pepper's encounter involved a pale man who leaped over the fence into a cow pasture, while Wisconsin Frights gives the date as March 14, 1981, and quotes the figure as approximately 6'5" tall, wearing a black cape and white painted face. Now, these variations are worth noting because they show how the case evolved from a police anecdote to a local legend over time. Now, for more than 2 decades, the story seems to fade. Then, March 14, 2004, police reportedly responded to multiple complaints involving a strange figure near an apartment complex. Witnesses claimed that someone was sitting in a tree and leaping toward people as they passed below. The description was similar to the earlier Graceland Cemetery account, a tall caped person with a pale face. When officers arrived, the figure allegedly jumped from a tree and ran. Police pursued it, but the trail appeared to end at a concrete wall. As in the earlier cemetery case, the escape itself seemed central mystery. The figure was there, then gone, with no clear indication of where it went next. Now, the third major report came in July 11, 2008. A young couple identified in the published account as Brandon Hines and Jamie Marker had been fishing from a jetty at Loudon Lake. While they were on the wooded structure, they began hearing noises beneath them. There was scratching, splashing, and an unnerving sound of something climbing up from below. Now, at first, Brandon believed it might be an animal. He stood and stumped on the jetty, apparently hoping the noise would scare it away. Instead, the sound moved closer. He then shone a flashlight between the boards, according to the report. He saw a caped figure climbing up from underneath the jetty. Jamie fled first, running back to their vehicle. Brandon, frozen from the moment when he saw through the flashlight at the figure, and then ran after her. When he reached the car, Jamie was already inside with the doors locked. Brandon got in, started the engine, and saw the cape figure moving quickly towards them. The couple drove directly to the Mineral Point Police Department to make the report. Now, officers were dispatched to Loudon Lake, where they reportedly found the couple's fishing gear still present, except for the missing flashlight. Now, these 3 reports appear to form the core of the Mineral Point vampire legend. The 1981 cemetery sighting, the 2004 apartment complex incident, and the 2008 Loudon Lake encounter. Later articles had treated the case as folklore, a local mystery, or a possible prank, but police response angle and the repeated escape patterns keep the story from being dismissed too casually. There is also a separate werewolf account connected to Mineral Point. In Linda Godfrey's Hunting the American Werewolf, Beastmen in Wisconsin and Beyond, a woman identified as Kim reportedly described a 1987 incident in which she saw a werewolf-like figure in the middle of the spring afternoon shortly before the full moon. Now, according to the account, the creature was running while transforming, entering a building, grabbed the railing, and changed back into human form. Godfrey reportedly noted that the story could not be corroborated through additional witnesses, even though the woman claimed others were present. That alleged 1987 incident should be treated separately from the vampire report. Still, it adds another layer to Mineral Point's odd reputation. Within a relatively small geographic area, the local lore seemed includes a pale caped cemetery figure, a tree leaping night stalker, a jetty encounter at Ludden Lake, and a reported werewolf manifestation. Now, the Mineral Point vampire legend is difficult to classify. Was it a prankster, local eccentric, a costume trespasser, a folkloric figure that grew with each retelling? Possibly. But the reports include troubling details, especially the repeated pattern of sudden appearance, impossible escape, and lack of ordinary physical evidence where there should have been tracks or a clear route of flight. That brings us to another Wisconsin report where a witness saw something that could not be easily folded into the known explanation. The next encounter took place on August 5th, 2021 at Wisconsin State Fair at a concert by Christian rock band Skillet. The crowd had gone. The night was late. Cleanup crews were working near the main stage. And near the edge of the parking lot area, one worker saw something tall, black, winged, and watching. Now, the witness, a college student entering her final year, was working at part of a cleanup crew at Wisconsin State Fair on the night of August 5th, 2021. She and another worker of similar age were assigned to pick up trash near the main stage following a concert that had ended roughly 2 hours earlier. Now, while working near the far right side of the stage and talking casually, her co-worker suddenly shouted an alarm. Approximately 30 feet away near the edge of the parking lot, used as motor track infield during the fair, the witness observed a tall humanoid figure unlike anything she had ever seen. The entity appeared to be about 7 foot tall, extremely thin yet solid, and entirely black. Most striking were its glowing yellow eyes and large bat-like wings extended an estimated 12 foot from tip to tip. The entity appeared focused on the personnel dismantling the stage equipment and initially seemed unaware of the two witnesses. It then took several unsteady steps toward the stage before turning its head and looking directly at them. Now, at that moment, the witness described an overwhelming psychological and emotional response. She felt as though the air had been pulled from her lungs and experienced complete immobilization accompanied by absolute fear. She was unable to scream or move. After several seconds, the entity rapidly flapped its wings as if stretching them, then lifted into the air and vanished into the night. The witnesses remained frozen until another worker approached and asked if they had seen something nearby. When told what had happened, the individual suggested it might have been a large owl or another bird distorted by light and shadows, and questioned whether they were under the influence of drugs. The witness strongly rejected that explanation, stating with certainty that what she saw was real and that the behavior was intelligent. The pair completed their shift and left the fairgrounds around 2:30 a.m. The witness noted that her co-worker appeared deeply shaken and stated he planned to remain in the well-lit areas for the rest of the night. Now, the Wisconsin State Fair report is one of the more disturbing winged humanoid cases in this lineup because of the witness's reaction. She did not simply become frightened. She described a sudden immobilizing terror as if the air had been pulled from her lungs. The entity appeared intelligent. It noticed her, and it reacted. The pattern is familiar to many winged humanoid and Mothman-related cases. The figure, the wings, the glowing eyes, the paralysis, and the sense of direct awareness. But not every unexplained encounter in Wisconsin carries menace. Our next report takes us to Madison, outside an emergency service clinic during one of the most painful moments in a witness's life. This case is different. It does not involve a monster, a predator, or a shadow in the trees. It involves a stranger who appeared at exactly the right moment, offering prayer, gave the witness strength, and then vanished. Now, the witness states this occurred in the parking lot of an emergency service clinic in Madison, Wisconsin. My father had been living with lymphoma for 5 years, but started exhibiting stroke-like symptoms one day in April. Nice weather plays a part in all this. I don't remember who my family called at work, but I was 45 to 50 minutes away. Now, when I arrived at the clinic, no one was with my dad, not my mom, not any medical personnel. My father was in a pleasant but befuddled mood, able to chat, but not clear on where people were. This is before anyone in my family had a cell phone. There was a phone on the wall next to my dad's bed, which I used to call my husband at work, who had agreed to be the communication point to ask what the hell was happening. I recall hearing my spouse tell me that my father had been diagnosed with a brain tumor. I'm staring at Dad, trying not to show my shock and devastation, even though he had been told, but doesn't grasp this. Now, while they had to wait for an ambulance transport to a hospital, my mom had run home for his meds and necessities. My husband said my mom called and she hadn't found Dad's insurance card, so could I go look for it at their house so Mom could be with Dad? Okay, sure. I was numb. I drifted into a haze to my car in a very full parking lot. I rolled down my window as I started the car, and a flood of tears came. My sobbing was so physical that I couldn't back out of the spot. But then suddenly, a middle-aged African-American woman appeared at my car window, asking to pray with me. I managed to nod my assist, and she reached to hold my left hand. I don't remember anything she said, but she was praying aloud. It calmed me. It instantly gained the mental and physical strength to cope with this tragedy. Then suddenly, she was gone. She simply vanished into thin air as I was looking at her. I'm totally convinced that she was an angel. My dad's aggressive brain tumor against all odds, and to the surprise of the oncologist, disappeared within 3 months. He lived another 12 years and eventually passed away, not from lymphoma, but by natural causes. He was 93 years old. Now, the Madison angel account stands apart because of its emotional tone. Instead of fear, the witness describes comfort. Instead of pursuit, there is intervention. Instead of trauma, there's strength. And yet, it belongs in this presentation because it raises the same core question as the darker cases. Can something appear briefly in our world, interact with a witness, and then vanish in a way that defies ordinary explanation? Now, the next report moves back into stranger, more ambiguous territory. Near Sturgeon Bay in northeast Wisconsin, a witness walking his dog encountered what is believed to be an invisible, two-legged presence in a wooded park area. He heard it. His dog reacted to it. He saw the grass and the brush move under the pressure of something large. But for much of the encounter, the thing itself could not be seen. Now, this witness states, "Hello, I've been reading your post describing what you call a Glimmer Man. I had a very strange encounter with an invisible two-legged large sections have wooded areas alongside the paths. Most of the trail has woods on one side, and the park is on the other. The wooded area is not very large. I would guess about 300 feet by half a mile. So I don't consider it as a forest. I just call it the woods. Now, I'm located in northeast Wisconsin near Sturgeon Bay. Now, the park's wooded area has 3 or 4 small creeks, and I think only one has any water. Most of the trees are beautiful and normal, tall trees, and some here and there look like they're dead. There are also people and kids going down there to ride bikes, hang out, and whatever else they do. So one day around 4 p.m., I took my female dog, Jazz, for our normal everyday walk. We had just gotten out of the car and began our walk. Now, we were probably walking on the trail for about 4 or 5 minutes or so when I started feeling weird after a turn. No, not scared or afraid. I started feeling happy, and my little pain aches had disappeared. This was very strange because I remember saying to myself, not out loud, "Wow, I feel good. I feel like a little kid. I feel brand new." It was only about 20 seconds of this young, joyful feeling when all of a sudden something let go of a large bush it had been holding on to. The thing sounded like it was tangled in the bush, like it was holding on and trying to hide. At the same time as the noise in the bush, Jazz turned toward the bush and started going after it. I had Jazz on a leash, and she was dragging me, almost taking me into the woods. I had to hold her back because I couldn't see what was making all that noise. It moved through another tall bush and started stepping heavily with loud thumps. I think it fell when it left the bush area. The thing was only about 15 foot away from us on the other side of the bushes and sounded like two very large horses stomping on the ground. I could see the bush and the grass moving, but I could not see anything. We stepped back a few feet from the trail so I could see a clearing on the other side of the brush to try and see this thing. I looked right where the footsteps were coming from and saw nothing. I looked down at the ground and saw that your 2 feet were stepping onto the tall grass. I remember I said to myself in my head, no way, this is not an invisible monster. Now, after I said that, I heard something I'll never forget. The thing started making loud T-Rex stomps. Then I said out loud, that sounds like a T-Rex from the movies. I recall feeling the stumps on the ground. Jazz and I were just looking into the woods at the sound. I could feel my eardrums shaking badly, and both eardrums felt like busted speakers. In my head, I said, it's trying to blow my eardrums. The T-Rex stumps lasted about 10 to 15 seconds. Then the sound stopped, as if a light switch had been turned off. I have no idea whether it jumped into something or vanished. It's strange because after all that, I still felt happy with no worry or fears at all, just very curious. I really wanted to see it. Now, on the way home, I remembered that the other day I would have been afraid, or other day I would have been afraid and would have run away from it. I heard this thing 3 or 4 times in the following days in another section of the woods. I could hear someone walking on leaves just inside the tree line, about 30 feet away in the woods alongside Jazz and me. I would hear it and stop without turning to it, and it would take a step or two, then stop. I turned around a few times to see nothing because it wasn't moving. I did this a few times to make sure. I would tell myself in my head, if a person stays on the trail, they have no permission to take you. I think one time I heard his steps in the woods next to me. I said to myself in my head, I think it wants me to make a mistake and go into the woods toward it. After I thought that, I'd never hear it again. I'm sure it can hear what I'm thinking. Now, just a few weeks ago, I saw something very strange related to this thing. Jazz and I were walking in the same part of the trail, only about 100 feet away from the first encounter, where the bushes were. I stopped to look into the woods, and I was standing still, looking past the trees. The area was covered in a few inches of light green grass. I was looking kind of downhill at how the woods go down in and around the creek down there. I said to myself, it looks beautiful, the trees, the color of the greens, and the sunlight and shadows. It looks like a postcard. Perfect. About 2 or 3 seconds after that, I thought that while I was just looking down at the area of the woods, I saw a big human-shaped blur move between 2 trees about 80 feet away. I saw it for a split second. It was big, maybe 10 foot tall, big head, big muscled shoulders, and I remember it had its big left leg. I remember its left knee and the big muscle above it. I could see the thick, shiny hair on the leg. Yes, this thing looked exactly like the predator from the movie when it was cloaked. It was very weird how my brain captured that image. My memory surprised me. Its shoulders, its head, and the side of its back were reflecting the woods between him and me. It looked like a male, not a female. In my opinion, it took off running because I sensed it was in the area, but I had no idea it was there. I'm very cautious when I go for a walk near the woods now. I also tell people where I'm going. I have no idea why this thing got so close to me and what its intentions were. And I also don't know why it ran away from me those times. Was there something or someone behind me that startled it? These occurrences were an incredible time in my life. It changed me for the better. I often think, I don't know, but maybe that's why dogs are on the planet, to help us pick up on these invisible things when they get too close. Always be happy and do things you love. Have no worries and certainly no fear. I hope my story helps people to be alert and careful out there in the world. Now, the Sturgeon Bay Glimmer Man case is unusual because the witness did not initially feel fear. In fact, he described the opposite, a sudden sense of happiness, youthfulness, and a physical relief just before the disturbance began. That emotional shift is worth noting. In some paranormal cases, witnesses report fear, nausea, confusion, euphoria, missing time, or a feeling that the environment itself has changed. Here, the witness later saw a large human-shaped blur like a cloaked predator effect moving between trees. But our next report is more physically direct. South of Barron, Wisconsin, on a dark country road around 8 p.m., a driver saw green eyes near a driver's side window about 4 foot high. At first, the witness couldn't understand what had appeared. Then, after turning around, the witness saw the animal fully in its headlights. It wasn't a deer, not a dog, not a cat, not a cow. It seemed to be something else entirely. Now, the witness tells me, for many years, I had been haunted by something I saw in the backcountry of Wisconsin. It was early spring, and I was headed down a dark country road around 8 p.m. south of Barron, Wisconsin. Surrounded by trees, I drove over a hill and a little ways down the other side. I saw a reflection of green eyes near the driver's side window, about 4 foot high. I was confused because they were right by my window, and I didn't see anything in the road ahead of me a second earlier. It seemed to be trying to be invisible and had appeared just a moment too soon. I drove a little further and decided to turn around to see if my eyes had been playing tricks on me and if it was indeed an animal of some kind. And as I approached, my mind whirled because I could see an animal there, but then an overwhelming sense of fear overcame me when I could not identify it. I pulled up to it, now about 20 foot away, and it was in front of me. I was horrified by this time, and I knew in my heart that I could not take my lights off it or I'd die, or so my gut told me. In front of me stood a creature that was 4 feet at the shoulder, but approximately 5 to 6 foot tall to the top of the head. It had the head of something like a cat, a muscular body of a dog, but was the size of a cow and very lean. It had cat-like ears and a short snout, but overall it was definitely not a cat. It had a cocoa brown fur with dark brown zebra-like stripes running down its side. It also had a dark brown mane running down its back. Its green eyes were in the front of its head. Out of fear, I flashed my headlights at it and then honked my horn, hoping it would run off. It only looked as if I had infuriated it as it brought its head down to the ground, keeping its eyes on me as if I was threatened, or it was threatened. Several times the thought crossed my mind that, in fact, it was strong and big enough to bash the windshield, rip me out of the car, and eat me alive. I knew it wasn't going to be the one to back down after flashing my light and honking at it, so I decided to keep my lights on it and back down the road in reverse. I did just that, and as it stared intently at me, I reversed about a quarter mile, then did a U-turn in the road and peeled out. No one has mentioned this creature before or since that I have read. Now, as far as animal goes, it was way too big to be a deer, too lean and muscular for a deer as well. It had cat-like features, but was much too tall to be any type of large cat. It was way too tall to be any type of dog, definitely not a cow as I had ever seen. I lived and hunted in the area for many years, so I was very attuned to the area's native animals. I sure hope someday I find someone else who has experienced this demon-like animal. Now, the Barron County creature is one of those reports that resist easy classification. The witness described a lean, muscular animal with cat-like head, dog-like body, and cow-like size, green forward-facing eyes, cocoa brown fur, dark zebra-like striping, and a dark mane down its back. That combination does not fit any known Wisconsin wildlife. But Wisconsin has another category of creature reports that are even more disturbing, winged humanoids. Our next case is one of the most notable. It occurred on September 26, 2006 on Briggs Road near La Crosse, Wisconsin. The witnesses were a man known by his Cherokee name, Will Holly, and his adult son. What came at their vehicle had bat-like wings, long claws, a terrifying scream, and a body that made them physically ill for days afterwards. This is the Man-Bat of Briggs Road. Now, this encounter happened on Tuesday, September 26, 2006, on Briggs Road near La Crosse, Wisconsin, around 9:30 p.m. The witnesses were a 53-year-old resident who prefers to be known only by his Cherokee name, Will Holly, and his 25-year-old son. The creature they encountered was described as 6 to 7 foot tall with bat-like leathery wings spanning 10 to 12 feet, had long claws on his feet and hands, and a snarling expression. It flew towards their windshield, stared at them, and then swooped upward into the night sky. The creature reportedly screamed at them before sailing straight up into the air. Well, Holly stated that he did not know whether the creature had been on the road and then bounced up at them, or if it had already been flying when it came toward their vehicle. But he was certain that the thing was physical and real, unlike anything he'd ever seen before. Their reaction was immediate and extreme. Within seconds, both men became physically ill. The son who was driving swerved and then pulled the truck over into a ditch so he could vomit. He vomited 6 or 7 more times. Well, Holly retched as well, and both men reportedly remained sick for an entire week. The son was so frightened by the encounter that he refused to discuss it. Well, Holly, however, said that he felt it was important for people to know what was out there. He also described seeing distended ribs, long human-like legs with claws, huge bat-like wings with arms stretched or attached, teeth, and a scream that he described as terrifying. Now, Will Holly's account in sincerity convinced researcher Linda Godfrey that he had a credible sighting of something he had not heard described before, or she had not heard described before. Now, Godfrey noted that it had been nothing to gain by making it up or talking about it, and that he believed the more he talked about it, the more power it gave the creature. And Godfrey stated that she felt it was important that someone record his experiences. Now, the Man-Bat of Briggs Road ranks among the more notable weird experiences connected to Wisconsin. Now, another similar entity was reported when a man and a boy were searching for a lost dog. They saw what they described as a lizard man covered in brownish scales and very reptilian looking. Around the same time, a state DNR warden and separately a group of highway workers reportedly saw what they described as the reptile man on Highway 13 near Medford. It also had wings and could fly out of their view. Now, the Medford location was near the Black River, which flows up from the La Crosse area. Now, since these sightings, some people have suggested that this creature may have been a Mothman-like entity, especially given earlier reports of strange activity in the La Crosse region. Could these sightings have been related to Chicago and the Lake Michigan winged humanoid phenomena? That question remains open. Now, the Briggs Road encounter is important because it links several recurring Wisconsin elements: roadways, nighttime travel, winged humanoids or winged beings, violence, physical reactions, and a witness left convinced that what appeared was not imaginary or symbolic by physical presence. There was also broader connections worth considering. Some have wondered whether such sightings are related to the Mothman phenomenon, especially given the La Crosse area's own history of strange associations and drowning lore. Others have compared winged Wisconsin reports to the later Chicago and Lake Michigan winged humanoid wave. But Wisconsin's roadside phenomena do not stop with winged creatures. Our next account begins near Milwaukee with two friends driving north at night, simply exploring roads they did not know. They exited into an area of cornfield with no visible homes, no gas station, and no town lights. Then they saw two children standing beside the road. At first, the situation seemed odd. Then the driver saw the eyes. The witness states, "This story happened to me about 16 years ago. I was around 24 at the time. I worked in hospitality, so my friends and I hung out later at night. So at around 9 o'clock, my friend and I decided to go for a drive, someplace we'd never been, just to get the car and go. I offered and waited to drive because my mother was out of town and I was using her Mercedes Benz. It was one of those early 90s E-bodies, the one that were big piles of heavy steel, a real tank of a car. I only mention the car body because it becomes relevant later in the story. He happily agreed and he hit the road. We lived near Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the time. We drove north out of the city and drove about an hour when I saw an exit I didn't recognize and decided to get off there. There was nothing at this exit other than cornfields, no gas station or restaurant signs, no visible light of a town in any direction. So we were in a place we didn't recognize, but that was the point, just driving to get nowhere because the speed limit was 35 and we were in no rush. The moon was out enough that everything was pretty visible. About a mile into the cornfields, we could see two kids on the right side of the road. We commented on how weird it was because there was no housing, stores, or even lights on the horizon. Plus, it was around 10:30 at night. Naturally, we were too large a guys, so we didn't worry about anything. I slowed down so we could check whether their car had broke down or if they were okay. And as we pulled up, I noticed the kid in the front's clothing. It was stained, cream-colored tweed-like shirt with real tattered sleeves and overalls and only one strap. He appeared to be maybe 12 years old. The second kid was taller, wearing a red flannel-type shirt and old-time-looking khaki pants. However, I could barely notice the taller kid standing further behind the smaller one because as I pulled up, I noticed the clothes and got to see the whole child. His arms were to his sides, slightly raised, almost in an iconic zombie way. But his eyes, I couldn't take my eyes off them. I did my best to mutter to my friend, "You're seeing this too, right?" His eyes were pitch black, blacker than night, but easy to see as he stood there staring at us. I did not know what the heck I was seeing, but I'll never been so frightened in my life. And I've had several odd experiences that have left me unable to deny that there is more in this world than we understand. So we're stopped for a moment, locking eyes with whatever this thing was. It was no child. It was evil. I have zero doubts about that. We quickly agreed to go, and fast. We were not going to inquire with them. This is straight out of the Twilight Zone, and I remember the hitchhiker, and that it was not happening tonight. So we went and we clambered between ourselves. What the heck did we just see? What was that? What the hell was that? Still no signs of homes, just open cornfields. How these two kids could be there, I don't know, but I believe they weren't kids. So I kept driving, and we got out of the field onto the winding wooded road shortly after, probably around 5 minutes. In Wisconsin, there are no random historical markers that display the year the event occurred. It only mentioned that because I passed one on a curve, so I glanced at that. And as I was driving through the curve going around 45 miles an hour, a creature walked in front of my car. And as I saw it, it was nothing like I'd ever seen. Its spine was tall, and it stuck above the hood ornament as I hit it. It was a gray color and looked like nothing I'd ever seen. It had a very tall arch in its spine, almost like when a cat hisses and goes on its toes, that kind of shape, but very tall and gangly creature. I hit this thing straight on with the tank of the Benz. My friend was freaked out at this point, as was I, to say the least. I stopped immediately. But now we were both scared because of the children in the cornfields, and now this thing, literally within minutes of one another. We decided getting out wasn't going to happen, but I decided to stay in the locked car and use its lights to see what we hit and make sure whatever the hell it was dead. I needed to know what I just saw. I drove in tiny circles, backing up and forward, looking for the creature, but after checking every inch within 100 yards and not seeing a thing, including not a drop of blood where I hit it, straight on with the Benz, making contact with the spine, body, and head, there was just nothing. That was unnerving, and although I want to check my mother's car, I would deal with that further down the road. We were not going to get out there, so we decided to head home at that point. So 15 minutes later, before I got back onto the freeway, I needed to get out and see how bad the car was. And as I got out to check quickly, since I wasn't taking chances tonight, I noticed my grill was busted in, but nothing too bad. So I made sure it was secure and got back in as quickly as possible. My friend decided to stay inside the car. Now, recently I heard about black-eyed kids and freaked out a little. I don't know if they're a real thing. I thought just a couple of demon kids or damn ghosts, or I didn't know what to think. And to this day, I've looked through tons of photos of supposed cryptid beasts and mythological creatures looking for what I hit. And the closest I've found is some Algonquin drawings of wendigos. And they were very close to what I believe I saw and hit that night. It seems very odd to me that both things could happen so close to one another and not be related. Possibly it was an evil area or a ley line. I just don't know. I would like to point out that I've lived in Wisconsin for a long time, and it was not a deer, a coyote, or anything else. What I hit was nothing native to the known Wisconsin landscape, and neither were those hard kids. I'll never forget either those faces, and just hope I never come across them ever again. Now, the Milwaukee area report is one of the strangest in this collection because it appears to combine two separate anomalies within minutes. First, the witnesses encountered what had been black-eyed children standing alone in a remote rural area. Then, only a short time later, they strike a tall, gray, arch-spine creature with the car, damaging the grill, but find no body, no blood, no physical remains. The witness later wondered whether the two events were connected, perhaps tied to an evil area, a ley line, or another zone of heightened strangeness. That idea, an area rather than a single creature, is worth carrying into the next report, because our next case takes us to the Kettle Moraine State Forest area near Whitewater Lake, and not far from Bray Road, a region already famous in Wisconsin cryptid lore. There, a group of young people encountered a massive figure on a trail. Now, the witness says, I grew up in the Kettle Moraine State Forest in southern Wisconsin. I would constantly ride ATVs and dirt bikes in Natureland Park on the south end of the Whitewater Lake. Now, this section of Kettle Moraine has 122 acres of trails and wilderness for people to enjoy. It borders the south end of Whitewater Lake. The trails are fairly well used during the summer, but never packed with people. Now, when I was younger, some friends and I would run around Natureland Park doing what dumb kids do. And just for the record, I lived about 18 minutes from Bray Road, the supposed home of the Beast of Bray Road. Anyway, some friends and I were running around the trails on Natureland Park back in the day, probably about 8 of us. We heard something breaking branches off the trail not too far away from us. We all stopped to listen. There were no bears, no cats, nothing too scary around. Maybe the occasional coyote, whitetail, raccoon, etc., but whatever this was had to be large. So as we got a bit concerned, this thing must have moved because we heard a large snap of a branch. We took off running like a bunch of lunatics. We could hear this thing running behind us. It was literally like something out of a movie. My friend tripped and fell as we were trying to catch up with the rest of our friends who had left us in the dust. And as I stopped to help the other kid, we both looked back down the trail to see the silhouette of something enormous standing in the trail and staring at us. I couldn't make out any detail. It was just a massive black mass of something that looked like it wanted to dismember us. I yelled, "What the hell is that?" Just about the same time, this thing dropped down on all fours and bolted off toward the timber like a freight train. We got out of there as quickly as we could. We could hear the thing busting through the woods, getting further and further away from us. And as we got to the parking lot, everyone around us heard a commotion. We got on our bikes and rode like crazy all the way back home. It's not too much of an encounter, but it was enough for me to never go back to Natureland Park at night ever again. This all happened about 35 years ago, and I've heard only a handful of people, or in total, a handful of people. I actually feel a bit better getting this out. Not too much happens around the small town. Now, of course, the Kettle Moraine report is brief but powerful. A group hears something large breaking branches off the trail. They run. One of them falls. Looking back, they see an enormous black mass standing on the trail watching. And it drops on all fours, bolts through the woods like a freight train. That detail is especially interesting because it echoes many upright canine, Sasquatch, and unknown biped reports where the figure alternates between two-legged and four-legged movement. Now, our final report takes us back to Walworth County near Darien, Wisconsin, on Creek Road near Turtle Creek Bridge. The witness was driving to work early in the morning when she saw a large winged being at tree top level gliding towards her vehicle. She described it as a flying witch, and then it descended towards her car. Now, on February 25th, 2019, I received a telephone call from an eyewitness referred as NV, who reported seeing a winged being early that morning around 5:30 a.m. near Darien, Wisconsin. Now, NV was traveling west on Creek Road on her way to work, and as she approached the Turtle Creek Bridge, she observed a large winged being that she described as a flying witch. The being was at treetop level, gliding toward her. Although it was early dawn, there was enough light for NV to make out its form. Suddenly, the winged being descended toward NV's car, narrowly missing the hood. NV described the being's wingspan as much wider than her car, and its body appeared to be a brownish color, like a paper bag. She noted that the body looked feminine and slight, with enormous bat-like wings. Remarkably, she did not notice the wings flapping, and the speed at which the creature descended felt unnatural. The being's face was unremarkable, almost blank. NV swerved the car and nearly hit the guardrail. Now, after the encounter, NV did not see where the winged being flew. Now, being of Hispanic descent, she mentioned that the being resembled the image of a witch she had been told about as a child. Now, NV expressed distress and anxiety about the possibility of encountering this being again in the future, which is something we hear from a lot of winged humanoid encounter witnesses. Now, when viewed separately, each of these Wisconsin reports is strange enough. A black road-running humanoid near Lake Geneva, a pale caped figure haunting Mineral Point, a winged entity seen at the Wisconsin State Fair, a vanishing woman in a Madison parking lot, an invisible heavy-footed presence near Sturgeon Bay, a demon-like striped animal south of Barron, a screaming man-bat near Crosse, black-eyed children and a vanishing road creature near Milwaukee, a massive black figure in Kettle Moraine, and a flying witch-like being near Darien. Now, on their own, these cases might be placed into different categories: cryptid, apparition, angelic figure or encounter, folklore, humanoid, wing anomaly, Glimmer Man, black-eyed children, upright canine, or an unknown animal. But together, they reveal a pattern. Many of these encounters happen near roads, bridges, trails, wood edges, cemeteries, fairgrounds, parking lots, lakes, and old communities. These are not random spaces. They are transition zones. A road is a transition between places. A bridge is a transition over water. A cemetery is a transition between the living and the dead. The fairground after closing is a transition between crowds and emptiness. A wooded trail is a transition between civilization and wilderness. And in 14 cases, transition zones matter. Witnesses repeatedly describe not just seeing something, but feeling something: terror, paralysis, nausea, dread, calm, euphoria, sudden certainty. The environment itself often seems altered. Darkness feels heavier. Silence feels unnatural. The witness's body reacts before the mind can explain what is happening. That may be one of the most important details in these Wisconsin accounts. The experiences are not merely visual. They're physical, emotional, and environmental, and the witnesses are changed by proximity. In several cases, the entities do not behave like ordinary animals. They appear aware, they watch, they react, they pursue, they evade, they disappear. Some seem to understand where the witness is looking. Some seem to occupy the edge of perception itself. And yet, Wisconsin's unexplained encounters are not all monsters. Of course, we have the Madison Angel report, reminds us of unknown and not always hostile. Sometimes it appears a moment of despair, gives strength, and vanishes before the mind can fully grasp what happened. That contrast is important because the unexplained is not one thing. It's not always a beast in the road or a winged horror in the sky. Sometimes it's a presence in the trees. Sometimes it's a pale figure in an old cemetery. Sometimes it's a child with black eyes standing there no child should be. Sometimes it's a woman in a car window offering prayer when a person is breaking apart. Wisconsin's landscape is layered with these accounts. The old mining towns, the lake roads, the wooded trails, the rural intersections, the bridges, the frozen fields, the deep forest all seem to hold stories that refuse to settle in ordinary explanation. Perhaps some are misidentifications. Perhaps some are folklore wearing modern clothing. Perhaps some are creatures we just don't yet understand. And perhaps some are not creatures at all, but events, intrusions, manifestations, or intelligences that appear briefly where the conditions allow. Whatever the answer, the witnesses come away with the same realization. Wisconsin is not as quiet as it appears. And on certain roads and certain hours, and when the trees close in, the headlights reach far enough to show you what is standing ahead, the old warning still applies. Keep moving. Do not stop too long. And do not assume that what you're seeing belongs to the world you thought you knew. This is Unexplained Wisconsin. Now, if you've had any unexplained encounter in Wisconsin or anywhere else, contact me at Fams and Monsters. Your report may help identify a pattern that has been hiding in plain sight for years. And as always, thanks for listening. Now, we kind of went a little over, so if you have any questions, go ahead and put them up there, and we'll see if we can answer them for you. Anything, folks? I see Paranormalism Net. Has anyone reported juvenile dog man, dog kids, or families? I've heard of smaller cryptid canines, but I don't know if they're children or not, or juveniles. Other than that, I really don't know. I don't know, but I heard of smaller ones. Dagnammit. Rumor has it that a family of Mothman-like creatures were spotted around Parrott State Park near the town of Trepolo, Wisconsin in 1975. I have not heard that. You may be right. If you have an encounter report anywhere, send it to me. I'd appreciate it. Anything else, folks? Okay, well, we're going to wrap it up for the evening, and I want to thank everyone for listening, participating in the chat. And if you provided a donation, I truly appreciate it. Please like, subscribe, and share. So until the next time we meet, stay alert, trust your instincts, and remember, sometimes the strangest places just aren't that far away. And have a nice evening. Have a great weekend. Have a great holiday here in the U.S. See you next Friday. Good night.